Now, something that I find really awesome about the M50 is something that's not mentioned a lot, and it's how great of a camera this is for making thumbnails. Now, of course, people do say all the time, like, and you can take your thumbnails with it because it does photos. Everyone's using this pretty much as a vlogging camera these days. But there's so much more than just having the ability to take photos that this camera has going for it to make it a really, really good thumbnail creation tool. This camera is so good for social media. And thumbnails is something that everyone knows is super important, but a lot of times we don't put as much thought and effort into them. But today I want to talk to you about 3 different ways that this camera helps you in creating thumbnails. Now, 2 of them would apply to other Canon cameras like the SL2 or the 60 Mark II, but one of them was exclusively, at least in this price bracket of Canon cameras, exclusively for the M50. The first is, of course, using the shutter button, and if you're taking pictures of yourself, then you put it on a 10-second timer, you frame it up, press the shutter button, and then you just stand where you want to stand. And of course, that way works great. You're going to get high-quality photos every single time, but that's not the only way we can do it. We can do it 2 other ways that make it a lot easier to get great thumbnails. The next thing you can do is use your phone with the Canon Connect app and actually use that to trigger your shutter. So you don't have to press the shutter, stand out there, hope it's in focus, hope that you're in the right place. You can actually connect your phone to the camera and then just use that to control autofocus, setting, all of that. So you can come over to like this brick wall, connect your phone, and then take your thumbnail. Now, I know some of you are probably thinking, why don't I say, well, every Canon camera is a beast for taking thumbnails? Because you can do that with the SL2, 7070, 60 Mark II, all of those cameras, yes, but this last one is unique just to the M50 and maybe the Eos R or some of the other high-end Canon cameras. And that way of doing it is using the 4K mode so we can get action shots like this. Now, it's important to note when doing it with the 4K, you gotta raise your shutter speed up really high to avoid as much motion blur as possible. You wanna have it basically sharp images, and so if you have your shutter speed how we normally want it to get natural motion blur, your images are just gonna turn out blurry. So raise that shutter speed to get as little motion blur as possible. Then what you do with the 4K file that you took is you actually put it in playback, and then you find which one of those 24 frames in that jump or however you did it that you want to use. And then there's a button over all the way on the right side that is save that frame as a photo, and it'll save it as an 8-megapixel photograph. Then we want to take the thumbnails that we took, transfer them to our phone. Now, I'm not going to do a tutorial on how I do this. Go into the app, it explains how to do it, and then just transfer your files over. But then we want to use an app called Snapseed. Now, this is something I recently learned about, but probably many of you have it because it's been around for years. You want to download that and then open up your files in Snapseed. Choose the picture that you want to edit, and then you'll see tools. And what I like to do is first I like to tune my image. I like to adjust my brightness. I like to adjust my contrast. I'm shooting flat usually for video, and so I like to make it a little more contrasty when I'm actually doing photos. Then in this one, I'm going to increase the saturation slightly because I want it to be more punchy colors. I'll increase the ambience just a little bit. The highlights I'll lower slightly so my shoes don't look blown out since we just raised our brightness. Lower my shadows slightly, and that'll add a little bit more contrast, and then I just save that. Next, I go in, and for this one, I'm going to go into details, and then move the structure, probably, I don't know, 58% looks good. And then save that. And then the only other thing I'm going to do for this one is I'm going to get a text. And I'm going to choose the text, put it right in front of my eye so it looks like I'm looking at it. And then I'm going to write thumbnail. And then I like this font. I think it needs to go a little bit lower down so it's basically in line of sight. So it looks like I'm looking at the thumbnail words. And then I want to press OK. Now after you've done that, you want to come up to this top part, view edits, and then go to your text. And then you'll see a little brush icon. And what I did for this one, you want to invert it. You want to figure out what in the photo you want to keep. And so this will let you decide what in the photo you want to keep. So you switch it to 0, and then you erase all around your thumbnail. And then what I like to do is I like to take 75% and just run it through. So all of that, 75%, so it's a little bit less than opaque. And then I like to lower it down to 25%, zoom in, and just get the edges of this so that it's basically just faded a little bit. And then when you press OK, it makes it so it looks more faded, and you're gonna have to play around with this to get it exactly to where you want it. And then after we're done that, we go back, we go to export, and then just export a JPEG. And then what I will do from there is I will actually email that photo to myself and then put it into my editing program. I'm not going to show you how I did that because I don't think it's a particularly good way of doing it, but I put it into my editing program if I want to do anything else to the photo, or I just download it and use it as my thumbnail, which is what I normally do if I'm not doing like a multi-picture thumbnail. The next photo, let's do the one with me jumping. And then for here, I'm really dark in here, so I definitely want to raise the brightness some and maybe raise the contrast just a little bit. But in order to get me so that I'm not looking so dark, I'm going to raise the ambience up a lot. And then I'm also going to raise my shadows up a lot. And that's going to like bring back the detail in my shot. Now, I like the way this looks. I'm going to save it, then go back, go to details again, add 50-something, 60% structure. That looks a little too much. 46% structure. That looks good to me. And then this one I think is pretty much ready. You could go in and retouch it and make it a little brighter or a little darker in my shot area, but I think this looks pretty good. So export that, save it as a JPEG. Now with this app you can save it so you can modify the changes later, but we're not going to do that right now. And then I open up another image, open from device, camera roll, and I choose this last one. Now this one I wanted to maintain the highlights. I didn't want to blow out the sky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take tune image and I'm going to go down to shadows. And I'm going to raise my shadows all the way up because I want you to see me a bit better. And then I'm going to take ambience and raise that up as well. That way you can actually see me in the photo and it's not just sort of a silhouette. But then also what I want to do here, because it makes it look a little less flat, when you increase the saturation, I'm going to increase the saturation by 26%. That looks good to me. And then again, I go in, go to details, increase the structure. And why I'm increasing the structure so much is that because you have such a small file, and the way that people see it on their devices is you want it to be overly sharp, like to the point where it looks stupid if you blew it up in a regular photo. Because when they see the thumbnail, you want them to see a really sharp looking image. So it's gonna look really weird when you just throw it onto your computer as a photo, but increasing the structure a lot is going to make it look better as a thumbnail. So that's how I've been making my thumbnails over the last few months. It's just really convenient to do with the M50. Now, I gotta be honest, when I started using this camera, I expected it to be a pretty basic camera and to know pretty much everything in the first couple of weeks, but this camera keeps surprising me with all sorts of different things that it does incredibly well, at least in my opinion, having very limited experience with cameras. It does everything that I need it to, and then it does more than I even realized, and I'm learning more and more every week about how to use this camera better and how to create better content with the M50. So if you found this video helpful, go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe to the channel for more content like this, and I'll see you all in the next video.